Did you perform an autopsy on Grandma? Roman Vasilievich, the head of the morgue, asked me. Yes, I did, I answered. She had a liver, didn't she? Well, she did, I said somewhat uncertainly. And kidneys? Yes, there were kidneys. A heart, lungs? Yes, there was a heart and lungs. And the pancreas? I shrugged and barely audibly squeezed out, I don't know. Wait a minute, Roman Vasilievich began again. He was tall, gray-haired, in a white hospital gown. Getting up from his chair, he leaned over the table, glancing now at his laptop, clicking the mouse, now at the pile of papers. Did you perform an autopsy on Grandma? Well, I did, I said again, not understanding whether he was serious or just joking. Did she have a liver, lungs, kidneys? Yes. Yes, my voice became louder and more lively. Was there a heart? Well, it was like everyone else's. Yes, like everyone else. And probably a liver. And there was a liver. I couldn't help but smile. And where's the pancreas? I shrugged again. I don't know. You don't know? He looked at me. I see. Roman Vasilievich took off his robe and stepped toward the wall where his winter coat hung on a hook. It was already evening. The shift was coming to an end. The head of the department went home, and I returned to the autopsy room. There, above the iron table, a fluorescent lamp was burning, covering the gutted corpse of an 80-year-old woman who had died a natural death with white light. In the shadows, on a chair in the corner, sat my partner Grisha, a short man with a bald spot, who at 27 remained a virgin. He was holding a plastic 1.5-liter bottle of diluted medical alcohol. He poured himself some into a glass and, after downing it in one gulp, offered it to me. I didn't refuse, and after drinking it, winced. It was about 60 degrees. There were only 2 of us left in the morgue. Having knocked back another drink, we chatted a bit, discussing where that old lady's pancreas had gone. As it turned out later, due to old age, the gland had grown together with the stomach. But due to our inexperience, we didn't know then that such a thing even happened. Before going home, Grisha helped me take the old lady's body to the refrigerator, after which, having drunk another shot, he went home. I stayed on duty. Entering the office, I lay down on the couch, covering myself with my jacket. With my eyes closed, I thought about what to do next. I was already pretty tired of working in the morgue, and the fate of Grisha, who was gradually drinking himself to death, did not appeal at all. I wanted to get out of there, but it wasn't all that simple. I was kept here by debt, a debt of $300,000 for my residency training. According to the contract, I had to work for 3 years or pay back the money. I'll sell the car, I thought, and find a better job. Looking ahead, I'll say that's what happened. And that night, when I was already starting to fall asleep, I heard some sounds from the corridor, as if there was someone else in the morgue besides me. This alarmed me. I sat up on the couch and listened. A muffled creak was coming from outside. It was clear to me that a heavy iron door was opening, and I guessed which one. The door to the refrigerator. There was little I could mistake the creak of that door for. I had to muster up my courage to take further action. Getting up from the couch, I confidently walked across the office, opened the wooden door, and went out into the corridor. To my left was a locked exit to the street. To my right was a corridor that stretched for 10 meters. In the middle were 2 doors, one to the morgue, the other to the toilet. Then the corridor, acquiring a T-shape, branched into 2 passages leading to the refrigerators. There was semi-darkness. Next to the doors to the toilet and the morgue, a dim light was burning, illuminating empty gurneys and a human figure standing at full height. And then I was wildly afraid. The figure was ugly, with crooked skinny legs that supported a baggy old man's torso. When the figure stepped forward, I saw a gaping hole in it from neck to waist. It was none other than that same old woman. Hobbling and staggering, she moved towards me. I immediately ducked back into the office, jerked the door shut, and turned the knob of the lock. A series of fast running steps clattered outside. Then someone hit the door hard. Once, then again. The blood rushed madly to my brain. My consciousness grew cloudy. The wooden door shook from the blows. Then everything went quiet for a moment, but then I heard a scraping sound. Someone was scraping their nails on the wooden surface. I heard a nasty, creaky old voice that pierced the depths of my soul. Letou. Ah, I said sleepily, squeezing out the first thing that came to mind. Yes, I think I had a bit too much alcohol. What had happened the night before began to seem to me like nothing more than headed to the office to change. I took off my robe, put on my jacket, gave my partner the keys and went home, saying that I would sleep all day and it would be better if he did not bother me with trivial calls. He nodded understandingly. I left the morgue and headed to the bus stop in the cold, which blew gusts of wind through my jeans and long johns. The morning sun blinded my eyes. A dream. It was a dream. It was spinning in my head, while thoughts of the past nightmare did not leave my consciousness. Arriving home, I immediately passed out without taking a shower and only managing to undress. I went to the bathroom when I woke up in the evening. The clock said 5:30, and outside the windows reigned the early winter darkness. I was alone at home. My mother was with a friend, and my father was on business in Novokuybishevsk. So there I was, standing under a stream of pleasantly warm water, washing the thick mass of shampoo out of my hair. The moment I picked up the soap, the light went out. It became as dark as a cellar. I washed myself blindly, turned off the water, and got out of the bath. Dry myself. Putting on fresh underwear, tights, and a t-shirt, I left the bathroom and was surprised to find that the light in the apartment was on, and in the hallway and in my room, everywhere where I had left it on. The thought that the light bulb had burned out immediately disappeared as soon as my gaze fell on the switch. It was in the off position. I clicked it and the light in the bathroom came on. There was definitely no one else in the apartment except me. A completely rational explanation came to mind. The switch button was apparently somewhere in the middle position and simply clicked off. However, in my memory, this was the first time something like this had happened. I returned to the bathroom, deciding to brush my teeth. I had barely spat the toothpaste into the sink when the light went out again. Opening the door and stepping into the hallway, I found the switch off again. I was home alone, but someone was turning off the light in the bathroom. I felt terribly uneasy. At that very moment, I felt someone's presence, someone nearby. My nose caught the familiar sweet smell of carrion, and I walked with measured steps to the front door, feeling fear fill my entire body. I took the keys from the hallway shelf, inserted the right one into the lock, and, turning sharply, pushed the door, jumping out into the coolness of the entrance hall. An old friend of mine lived on the floor above. I pressed the doorbell hard until the door opened, and I saw Dima, a tall, muscular guy with a crew cut, gray hair in a tank top and tights with stripes. He looked at me, perplexed, and I looked at him. "Hi, Kamill," he said. "Dima, there's someone in my apartment," I said, barely audibly. I was breathing like a chimney. My lungs were short of air from the stress. "Someone in the apartment?" I nodded. "Yeah." There was a short pause, which Dima spent thinking. He turned his gaze to the side, then stuck his hand somewhere behind the shoe rack and pulled out a baseball bat. "Let's go have a look," Dima said in his usual manner. We headed down the stairs. The door to my apartment was left open, a bunch of keys sticking out of the lock. Dima went in first. "Who's there?" he boomed. I stood next to him, behind his back. There was not a single extraneous sound in the apartment. We walked around the entire apartment, from the kitchen and rooms to the bathroom and balconies. We looked in the closets. No one there. But at that moment I understood that something was still nearby, and that something was not of a material nature. Of course, I didn't share my feelings with Dima. "Listen, Dima," I said when we returned to the hallway. "Don't you have to go to work tomorrow?" Dima shook his head, holding a baseball bat on his shoulder. "No. Maybe we'll have a beer. I'm a bit afraid to spend the night here alone." "Well, that's okay. Why not? I'll just warn my people now." We went out to the stairwell. I took the keys out of the lock and Dima walked up the stairs. While he was walking to his place and back, I was afraid to go into the apartment. Only when he returned with his shoes on, in a hat and jacket, did I go in with him for clothes and money. We went to the supermarket near the house for beer and fish. When we got back, we settled down in the living room, on a leather sofa in front of a widescreen TV. The comedy club was on. When we were uncorking our third bottle, Dima asked, "What happened here? Why are you so upset?" Being tipsy, I told him about what happened in the morgue and about how the light went out in the bathroom. I waited for a reaction, but there was none. Dima was clearly stunned by what he had heard. Knowing his character, I will say that he believed it more than not. The door to the room was wide open, and suddenly the light in the corridor went out. It went out by itself. We exchanged glances, sensing that something was wrong, and looked towards the door. At the opposite end of the corridor, I saw a silhouette in the semi-darkness, guessing in it the outline of an old woman. She was standing motionless, at full height. "Do you see?" I asked, holding a bottle of beer in my hands. Dima was silent. From his frozen expression, I understood without words that I was not the only one who saw the old woman. "Who is it?" he finally asked warily. I put the bottle on the coffee table and got up from the sofa. I stepped towards the door. Dima did the same. The silhouette stood like a lifeless mannequin. Stepping over the line of the doorway that divided the room and the corridor, I, continuing to stand next to Dima, felt around on the wall for a switch and turned on the light. The old woman had disappeared. "What the?" Dima babbled. In front of us was a brightly lit, quiet space of a corridor with an entrance hall, but the presence of someone or something was still in the air. "Someone was here," Dima said breathlessly. I confirmed, yes, someone was definitely here. And the light went out again, and I clearly heard how the switch clicked on its own, with a characteristic, recognizable sound. The old woman appeared again, now no longer in the semi-darkness of the far part of the corridor, but in a more illuminated place, a few steps away from us. I clearly saw her dead gaze and a gaping hole in her body. "Fuck!" Dima exclaimed and stepped back. We dived into the room, closed the door, and leaned on it. There was knocking from the other side. "Let me in, honey, let Grandma in." A grave, creaking voice sounded, penetrating to the bone. A blow, a second, a third, not strong enough to withstand our onslaught on the door. And after the blows came a grinding sound from somewhere below, and then a drawn-out, plaintive meow. "Is that your cat?" Dima asked, breathing heavily. "What cat? He died a long time ago." We continued to press on the door. Everything went quiet. Another 20 minutes passed, maybe half an hour. We calmed down and got tired. We sank to the floor, pressing our backs against the door. A little later, we took beer from the table and sat down by the door again, propping it up with our backs. We waited for the morning. The front door opened with a clang of the lock. Father returned. Only then did we leave the room. "Were you out for a walk or something?" asked Father, looking into the room. "Uh-huh," we nodded. Father drank some tea and went to bed. Dima and I grabbed some beer and went to my room. We sat in silence, at a loss for words. Then, at about 8 in the morning, Grisha called. "Listen, Kamill," he said. "We've had an emergency here." "What emergency?" The body's gone missing. A body? What body? I became wary. That old woman, the one we autopsied the day before yesterday. The investigator has arrived. I need to give a statement. The interrogation is here. Should I come over now? Yeah. Okay. I hung up and exchanged meaningful glances with Dima. When I arrived at the morgue, the old woman had already been found. Grisha swore and swore that he hadn't drunk that day, and when he came on shift, the old woman's body was gone. Roman Vasilievich, our manager, laughed at him. The investigator chuckled too. In general, the atmosphere was cheerful. By lunchtime, the old woman's relatives arrived and took the ill-fated corpse. She never showed up again. I quit the morgue the next day, sold my car, paid for my residency, and from that day on I never went near a corpse.